Determining whether someone is practicing witchcraft or voodoo against you can be a complex and sensitive issue. So in this video, I'm going to give you a detailed exploration to help you understand various signs, methods, and considerations. Number one sign that someone is doing witchcraft on you is unexplained illnesses. One of the most common signs that someone might be practicing witchcraft or voodoo against you is the onset of unexplained or persistent illnesses. If you experience sudden health problems that don't seem to have a medical explanation or persist despite treatment, it could be a sign of negative magical influence. The other sign that someone is practicing witchcraft or voodoo on you is frequent misfortunes. If you notice a pattern of frequent misfortunes, such as accidents, financial problems, or relationship issues, it might be worth considering that someone could be engaging in witchcraft against you. While bad luck can happen to anyone, a consistent and targeted series of unfortunate events could be a red flag. Someone is doing witchcraft on you if there is unusual physical symptoms. If you experience these unusual physical symptoms, sudden physical symptoms such as sudden fatigue, headaches, persistent headaches, or feelings of heaviness may sometimes be attributed to magical or spiritual interference. If these symptoms are persistent and they have no medical cause, they might be worth investigating further. Someone is doing witchcraft on you if you have strange dreams. Disturbing or recurring dreams can be another indicator. Dreams where you feel threatened, chased, or harassed, especially if they seem unusually vivid or alarming, might be a sign of someone working negative magic against you. Someone is doing witchcraft on you if you have unexplained emotional changes. Sudden and unexplained changes in your emotional state, such as feeling unusually depressed, anxious, or irritable without an obvious cause, can sometimes indicate that you might be under some form of spiritual attack or influence. If you have this feeling of being watched, you might be under witchcraft. Somebody might be doing witchcraft on you. A persistent feeling of being watched or followed, especially when there is no logical explanation, can sometimes be associated with someone performing witchcraft or voodoo on you. Unusual objects or symbols is another sign. Finding strange objects, symbols, or items around your home or in your personal belongings might be a sign. This could include items like candles, herbs, or amulets, which might be used in magical practices. If someone you know starts acting strangely towards you, whether they seem unusually hostile, distant, or overly interested in your personal life, it could be a sign of underlying magical practices. So, odd behavior from others is a sign that someone is doing witchcraft on you. Then, strange coincidences is also a sign. A series of strange coincidences or synchronicities where things seem to happen at unusually opportune times for someone else's benefit might indicate that someone is using witchcraft or voodoo to manipulate events in their favor. Unexplained physical objects is also a sign. Receiving or finding gifts that are unusual or have a sense of foreboding might indicate that someone is trying to influence or control you through magical means. Intuition and gut feelings is a sign too. Sometimes your own intuition or gut feeling can alert you to potential problems. If you feel an overwhelming sense that something is wrong, it might be worth exploring whether magical practices are involved. Unexplained financial losses is also a sign. Significant and unexplained financial setbacks or losses, particularly if they seem targeted or out of proportion to your usual financial situation, might suggest magical interference. Notable changes in your relationships, especially if they turn sour or become strained without clear reasons, could be influenced by someone using witchcraft to affect your personal connections. Disruption in daily life is also a sign. Major disruptions in your daily life, such as losing your job, unexpected accidents, or significant failures, could sometimes be linked to magical practices intended to bring misfortune. Physical alterations is a sign that someone is doing witchcraft on you. Unexpected changes in your physical appearance or health that are not explained by normal causes could be a sign of someone's attempt to influence you through witchcraft. Presence of negative energy is also a sign of witchcraft. Feeling an overwhelming sense of negative energy or a persistent feeling of malaise in certain places or situations might indicate magical interference. There's also recurrent bad luck. Experiencing a pattern of recurrent bad luck or misfortune, especially if it seems to align with specific individuals or events, might suggest that witchcraft or voodoo is at play. There's also unusual spiritual experiences. Experiencing strange or disturbing spiritual phenomena, such as feeling haunted or having unsettling spiritual encounters, could be a sign of someone using magic against you. Someone is doing witchcraft on you if there is unexplained behavioral changes. If you or people around you begin exhibiting unexplained behavioral changes, it could be a sign of external influence, including magical practices. Changes in pets' behavior is also a sign. Animals, particularly pets, can sometimes react to spiritual disturbances. If your pets exhibit unusual or fearful behavior, it might be worth considering whether magical practices are involved. If conventional methods and remedies, whether for health, emotional, or financial issues, are consistently failing to help, it might suggest an underlying magical influence. If you suspect witchcraft or voodoo, consulting a practitioner or expert in spiritual or magical matters can provide guidance. That's depending on the person, belief, or faith. They may help you identify if there is any magical interference and offer solutions. Engaging with mental health professionals can also help rule out psychological issues. Sometimes feelings of being targeted by witchcraft or voodoo might stem from mental health concerns rather than actual magical interference. If you suspect someone is practicing witchcraft against you, performing spiritual cleansing rituals, or seeking help from spiritual advisors can help clear negative energy and protect yourself, depending on your faith. Implementing security measures and being aware of your surroundings can help identify any unusual activity that might be linked to magical practices. Engaging with community support networks or groups with experience in dealing with spiritual issues can provide additional insights and assistance. Keeping a detailed journal of unusual occurrences, feelings, and experiences can help identify patterns and provide a clear picture of whether magical practices might be involved. Different cultures have varied interpretations of witchcraft and voodoo, so understanding the cultural context and practices specific to this suspected magical influence can help in identifying and addressing the issue. While it is very important to be open to the possibility of magical interference, it's also crucial to maintain a healthy skepticism. Not all misfortunes or unusual experiences are caused by witchcraft or voodoo. Regardless of whether witchcraft or voodoo is involved, focusing on your personal well-being and taking steps to improve your health, relationships, and financial situation can help mitigate the impact of negative influences. So identifying whether someone is practicing witchcraft or voodoo against you involves careful considerations of various signs and symptoms. While some of these indicators that I've mentioned in this video might point to magical interferences, it's essential to approach the situation with a balanced perspective. Identifying a witch has been a topic of intrigue and fear throughout history, particularly during periods of widespread superstition. The criteria for identifying a witch have varied greatly depending on cultural, religious, and historical contexts. So in this video, I'm going to give you an in-depth exploration of how to identify a witch across different perspectives. Number one, historical context. In medieval Europe, witchcraft was often associated with heresy and rebellion against the church. People believed that witches made pacts with the devil. Therefore, identifying a witch involved looking for signs of heresy, such as unorthodox religious practices or frequent attendance at non-Catholic services. Number two way of identifying a witch, number two perspective, is the physical appearance. Physical traits were once used as indicators of witchcraft. Common beliefs included that witches had unusual physical features such as a witch's mark, an extra nipple, or a distinctive birthmark throughout this throughout their body. Maybe there must have been a distinctive birthmark, and this was thought to be a place where demons would circle. Now, the other perspective of identifying a witch was through the behavioral traits. Inquisitors often looked for behavioral anomalies. For instance, if a person exhibited odd or unexplainable behavior, they might be suspected of witchcraft. This could include anything from peculiar rituals to unusual behaviors during religious services. Another perspective of identifying a witch was accusations and confessions. During witch hunts, accusations were frequently driven by personal grievances. Individuals might accuse others of witchcraft out of jealousy, fear, or vengeance. Confessions were sometimes extracted through torture, and these confessions could be used to identify witches. The other perspective of identifying a witch was supernatural powers. In many cultures, the ability to perform magic or to have supernatural powers was a hallmark of witchcraft. If someone was believed to have the power to cast spells, heal using magic, or foretell the future, they might be suspected of being a witch. Witches were often identified based on their social status or isolation. In some societies, elderly women, widows, or those who lived on the fringes of the community were more likely to be accused of witchcraft due to their social vulnerability. The other perspective of identifying a witch was unusual knowledge. Knowledge of herbal medicine or other traditional practices was sometimes considered suspicious. Those who were skilled in these areas were sometimes accused of using their knowledge for malicious purposes. The other perspective is behavior towards animals. In many witch trials, it was believed that witches had familiars or animal companions that were actually demons in disguise. Suspicion could arise if someone had unusual or unusually intelligent pets. The other way of identifying a witch was community influence. In some communities, individuals who did not conform to societal norms or who challenged local authorities might be accused of witchcraft. This could include those who spoke out against prevailing practices or who had progressive ideas. The other way of identifying a witch was unexplained misfortunes. If a series of unfortunate events such as crop failures, illness, or accidents occurred, some might attribute this to witchcraft. The person believed to be causing these misfortunes could be accused of being a witch. Then there is also religious practices. Deviations from mainstream religious practices or the adoption of new religious practices could be grounds for suspicion. This included practicing folk religions or participating in rituals that were not sanctioned by the dominant religion. The other way of identifying a witch was through witchcraft manuals. During the height of witch hunts, manuals like the Maleficarum were used to guide the identification of witches. These texts listed various signs and symptoms that were purportedly indicative of witchcraft. Another perspective of identifying witchcraft was legal framework. In some periods, laws were established to identify and prosecute witches. For instance, the Salem witch trials in colonial America used a combination of spectral evidence, confessions, and witness testimony to identify witches. There is the personal relationships perspective. A person's relationships and associations were scrutinized. If someone was known to have close ties with others who were suspected of witchcraft or had unconventional friends, they might be investigated or accused themselves. The other perspective is spiritual tests. Various tests were used to identify witches, such as the swimming test, where suspected witches were thrown into water. It was believed that if they floated, they were guilty of witchcraft. These tests were often brutal and unreliable. The other test of identifying a witch was cultural beliefs. Cultural belief was another perspective of identifying a witch. Different cultures have their own methods for identifying witches. In some African and indigenous cultures, witchcraft accusations are based on spiritual or ancestral beliefs unique to that culture. Then skepticism and rationality was another perspective of identifying a witch. In modern times, skepticism and rational thinking have led to the debunking of many old methods for identifying witches. Understanding of psychology and sociology has provided explanations for many behaviors previously deemed supernatural. Literary and popular culture was another perspective of identifying a witch. Modern portrayals of witches in literature and media often reflect and amplify historical fears and stereotypes. These portrayals can influence contemporary perceptions and misconceptions about what constitutes a witch. Then there's the gender bias. Historically, women were disproportionately accused of witchcraft. Gender bias played a significant role in witch hunts, with women, particularly those who were single or elderly, being more frequently targeted. Then there's the ethical considerations. Identifying witches based on superstitions and biases raises significant ethical concerns. Many people were wrongly accused and suffered severe consequences due to unfounded suspicions and prejudices. In some historical contexts, accusations of witchcraft were part of larger religious disputes. Conflicts between different religious groups or sects sometimes led to witch hunts as a means of asserting dominance or control. Then there is the medical explanations. Many symptoms attributed to witchcraft, such as mental illness or epilepsy, can now be understood through medical explanations. Recognizing these conditions as medical rather than supernatural phenomena helps demystify historical witchcraft accusations. The other perspective of identifying a witch was the legal protections. Modern legal systems have protections against wrongful accusations and punishments. Contemporary legal frameworks emphasize evidence-based approaches rather than superstitious or arbitrary criteria for identifying guilt. The other perspective of identifying a witch was psychological impact. The fear of witchcraft and the process of identifying witches have had profound psychological impacts on individuals and communities. Understanding these impacts can provide insight into the human response to fear and uncertainty. The other perspective of identifying a witch was historical lessons. Studying the history of witch trials and the methods used to identify witches offers valuable lessons about the dangers of superstition and the importance of evidence-based reasoning and justice. The other perspective of identifying a witch was the current witchcraft practices. In modern times, witchcraft is often practiced as a spiritual or religious path, such as Wicca, Identifying modern practitioners involves understanding their beliefs and practices rather than relying on outdated stereotypes. Then there's the cultural sensitivity. Understanding witchcraft requires cultural sensitivity and respect for different traditions. Many cultures have their own beliefs about magic and witchcraft that should be understood within their own context. The other perspective of identifying a witch was the educational efforts. Education plays a crucial role in dispelling myths and misconceptions about witchcraft, informing the public about the historical context and the real causes behind supposed witchcraft can prevent the recurrence of such fears. Then we have the legal reforms. The history of witchcraft trials has led to legal reforms aimed at protecting individuals from baseless accusations. Legal systems now emphasize due process and the presumption of innocence, which were often absent in historical witch trials. And finally, the last perspective of identifying a witch is the human rights perspective. The evolution of human rights has highlighted the importance of protecting individuals from unjust persecution. Recognizing and addressing the historical injustices related to witchcraft accusations is part of ensuring that such violations do not happen again. Now, these perspectives provide a comprehensive view of how the identification of witches has evolved over time, reflecting changes in societal beliefs, legal standards, and cultural understanding. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you've not done so. Thank you.